Welcome back to my Inktober videos. This is Inktober day 3, and the word for today was supposed to be, I think, roasted. I misremembered it as scorched, and so that's what I ended up writing on my paper. But I also will admit that I wasn't feeling particularly inspired for today's Inktober, but I still wanted to make a video. I still wanted to draw what came to mind when I thought of scorched, which was supposed to be roasted. And I put that on the paper. I'm not 100% happy with how the drawing came out, but I liked where I was going, and I'm happy that I'm at least getting over this roadblock, which was a word that I didn't like very much, and I got something out. And I think that's the most important part of Inktober, is that we're at least producing something, and we're thinking of things. Like these words and these concepts and these lists that we follow, they're supposed to make us draw things that we don't normally or ordinarily draw, right? Well, so that's the philosophy that I'm following with this Inktober, and what I decided to draw today was a Pokemon trainer in a field, like in one of those tall grass areas. Let me tell you about my relationship with Pokemon. I had 2 older brothers who both, well, one of them was my age, because I'm a triplet, but that's neither here nor there. So I had multiple brothers, and I think that kind of just was the course of action where they both played a lot of video games, and I loved to watch them play video games. I loved it so much. I was like their video game manual, because if they wanted to replay a game that I already watched them play, then I would be able to remind them which ways to go, because I think I remembered it better as I was just observing. I didn't have anything else in my head. I think that's why it's always easier to remember things when you're the one who's observing. But one of the things that I wasn't able to observe them play was Pokemon, because that was a handheld game, and I didn't really have my own handheld games, and that was okay with me at the time, because I would just go outside in the forest and in my own real grasses and hope maybe mystical creatures would find me there. Well, they're, on their Game Boys and Game Boy Colors and Game Boy SPs, catching their mystical Pokemon while I'm out getting lost in the forest. And it was only when I was in middle school that I picked up my first Pokemon game, and I fell in love with it. I love this drawing, if it's an homage to anything, is to Sapphire, which if you continue watching it, you might say, oh, Soleil, that doesn't make any sense, because the Pokemon you draw is a Quilava. So spoiler, I draw a Quilava in this video. But I really enjoyed the tall grassy parts of Pokemon Sapphire, and I know that those tall grasses existed in other games, and none of it's coming to my brain right now, so maybe I'm lying, maybe I'm not lying, I'm not sure, but the point is that the grassy parts, the tall grassy parts in Pokemon Sapphire and Ruby were like some of my favorite parts, like the treehouse village, favorite village. And I think I loved the emphasis on nature that they had, which is why when I started this drawing, I focused so much on those little wildflowers. And then I kind of just went wild with all the tall grasses, because I was like, oh, you know what? It's just going to be grass. To be honest, I kind of wanted to focus more on those wildflowers. But I think I just didn't have the inspiration. I didn't have an idea of how I was going to build them all on the page. I was trying really hard not to sketch anything out beforehand, although I ended up making a tiny pre-sketch of the basic gist of what I wanted to do. Because when I thought of Scorched, the first thing that I thought of was like a Pokemon trainer that is accidentally burned by their Pokemon. Like kind of a little side note tangent. So I loved Pokemon Sapphire. That is my go-to Pokemon game. But my other go-to Pokemon games are, and if you guys liked these too, please tell me, because I don't want to be the only person that is still obsessed with these games. Now, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, I know, has still a pretty big contemporary following, but did anyone else remember or play Pokemon Ranger? Pokemon Ranger was so good. I loved it so much. I don't even know if there was a sequel. I could probably Google it right now, but I'm not gonna. But tell me if there was. Even just the animations and the walk cycles that your little avatar goes through, I loved them. So I was all about those like spin-off games on the N64. My sister and I loved what was it? Pokemon Stadium. We loved Pokemon Stadium. And we would play it for hours together. We'd play the little games village that you could go into with like dig Sandshrew dig and run Rattata run and the Magikarp flop. I mean, I loved those. I've always loved when they take the Pokemon that we know and then kind of put them into an extra game, or give them mini games, or give them extra things that aren't really the formulaic Pokemon games that we know. I think that makes it a lot more exciting for me to play, and it gives me more memories. I mean, what I love about Pokemon Sun and Moon, because they take Pokemon games and they remind us that there doesn't have to be a formula, there doesn't have to be gyms, there doesn't have to be like a set way for each Pokemon game to go. There's still ways to improve, which I thought was wild, because I didn't realize that you could still improve on Pokemon, which was really the inspiration behind this video. I thought to myself, I can't really bring myself to think of anything hyper detailed or really complex that I want to draw, but I love the little relationships between trainer and Pokemon. I love capturing little moments on paper, little scenes, little breaths of air, like moments that would last no longer than a blink. And so with my first drawing, I did a witch brewing up a potion, and I love that drawing. I'm very proud of that one. For the second one, I got a little bit more experimental. I decided to do a forest, and for this one, I'm going to admit, I feel like I'm spiraling downwards, but that's okay. I'm going to catch my momentum again. That's like a cycle that you go through. You have inspiration, then it kind of dwindles, then you get inspired again, then it dwindles. And so for this one, I really wanted to just go into Pokemon, because I intended to do a lot more Pokemon for Inktober. I think I'm actually going to be going more spooky for the rest of Inktober, but I love it. And I think that some of my favorite like modern memories, after middle school and into adulthood have to be from playing Pokemon games. They create this really amazing world where you can befriend all these different creatures, and you're kind of fulfilling and role-playing that fantasy I had as a kid, that I would be able to have a sort of mastery or partnership, not even mastery, but partnership, and with creatures that don't speak your language. And even right now, I can actually see that still in how I treat my cat. I treat him very much like he's a small human, as if he can understand me, as if we talk to each other. And sometimes people joke around and say like, "Oh, Soley, you're a crazy cat lady." And yeah, I kind of am. But also, there's so many things that you can gain from seeking out that sort of relationship with the people around you, with the creatures around you. When you act with sincerity, whether it's an animal or a person, they tend to respond back with sincerity. When you're not holding any part of yourself back, people are much more open with you as well. And with that philosophy in mind, that's how I handle my cat. That's how I've always handled all my pets. And, playing Pokemon games lets you kind of live that to a more extreme level, where you're actually journeying with your Pokemon and your companions, and you're creating these partnerships. And I think that's also why Mystery Dungeon and Pokemon Ranger were a little bit more emphatic for me, because you didn't just have a roster of Pokemon, you had Pokemon that you had to talk to, or Pokemon that you had to empathize with to get them on your quote-unquote team, like in Pokemon Ranger. You couldn't just capture them with a Pokeball. It seems really cheesy now, but your little capture lasso imparted your feelings on the Pokemon. So how empathetic you were and how compassionate you were, how good-natured you were, was going to affect whether or not the Pokemon even wanted to be around you. Because the Pokemon decided if you caught it ultimately. If you haven't played Pokemon Ranger, I highly, highly recommend it. It's just for the DS. And so if you still play on DS games, like, pick it up, give it a shot. It's fantastic. In Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, you are a Pokemon and you're creating these relationships with the Pokemon that you're encountering on your rescue missions. Like, all of it is about more feel good, building relationships, all in the guise of, foreign creatures, but they're also teaching lessons that I really appreciate, that if you take to heart and you remember the lessons, you can still apply it in your everyday life. And so even though I'm not 100% happy with today's Inktober drawing that I did, and I think that I can do better than this, I still wanted to post it because I think it's important that even if I don't like it, that I still put it out there. Because maybe someone does really like it. Maybe somebody's inspired by it. I mean, that's a lot to ask, but I think it's worth a shot. And I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed doing all the little grass blades. But thank you for letting me ramble on, and I hope that you guys have a great day, and thank you again for all of your comments and your likes. I really appreciate them, and they power me up so I can continue on. So with that said, have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your night if it's already night, and have a good morning if you're just waking up.